Standing in front of the bigger slide here for the presentation. I understand that this will be live streamed to AltSpace after all. There was some question about whether that was possible. I'd like to welcome you all for coming out. This has just been a mind-blowing thing for me. To be basically, it is a real treat to not have to fit my cranky, fat, old ass into economy airline seating for a few hours in order to go somewhere to deliver PowerPoint slides. I can do that from the comfort of my own home, which is wonderful. I think we really need to do this more often. Shall I get started, Chris?
You go right ahead. And audience, I'm going to go ahead and mute you for the duration so we don't get any environment noise. And Ryan, welcome everybody to the Bodleian Library, and thrilled to have Ryan Schultz here to speak on libraries and blogging and social VR. It's very exciting. Take it away, Ryan.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Ryan Schultz, and I wear two hats. During the day, my paying job is as a reference librarian at the University of Manitoba Libraries in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. But in the evenings and on the weekends, I wear the hat of a blogger. For the last 2.5 years, I write a blog. It's branded under my own name, ryanschultz.com, and I specialize in social VR, virtual worlds, and the metaverse. So I'm giving you 2 talks for the price of 1 today. My first talk is 25 minutes. It's talking about social VR in libraries. And the second talk will be about 15 minutes, the lessons I have learned the hard way by being a social VR blogger. I am assuming my volume is good enough and all of you can hear me. Just kind of raise your hands if you hear me okay. Okay, great. It's so wonderful to have a live audience here. So now I'm going to just dive right into my talk. First, I'm going to talk about social VR in libraries, a look back and a look forward, because I think it's important to take a look at some of the preliminary steps that we've taken us to the point where we are today. How many of you here are librarians? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, 2 people. Yay! I'm going to apologize in advance to you because I am assuming that my audience overall is not very library knowledgeable, so I'm going to kind of do a bit of preliminary work. Many people tend to define the library as a collection of printed paper books or magazines, what we call journals. And some would expand that definition to include electronic resources such as e-books and e-journals. I would, however, argue strongly that the library, a better definition of library, is the actual service of a librarian. And when I use the word librarian, I'm using it in its broadest possible term. Any library worker, library technician, librarian. And basically, instead of a static collection of books and journals, even if they are digitized and accessible by a computer, the need for somebody to guide and lead people to find the information that they need to serve their information needs is a critical key piece of what makes a library. There are 4 major types of libraries. Academic libraries serve colleges and universities. Public libraries serve cities, towns, and regions. School libraries serve students from kindergarten to grade 12. And the 4th catch-all category is special libraries, which are in specialized environments like hospitals, corporations, museums, the military, private business, and the government. In my talk today, I will be focusing on academic libraries. However, much of what I present to you today will still be applicable to school and public libraries. And in fact, many K-12 schools and public libraries are already incorporating virtual reality. For example, many public libraries are instituting what are known as maker spaces, where they are making tools such as 3D printers and virtual reality headsets available for the public to use for rentable periods of time. Looking back, libraries have always embraced technology. Back in the 1960s and 70s, we used mini computers to automate the library's workflow, acquisitions, cataloging, circulation, and serials. In the 1980s, in 1982 to be exact, the CD-ROM was introduced as an information storage medium. I was actually involved with various projects setting up CD-ROM access on local area networks at my university's campus, making subject indexes to things like Medline and CINAHL and other databases available to faculty, staff, and students. There was a big swing towards putting everything on CD-ROM and locally mounting it. Now it's kind of swung back the other way, and everything is remotely accessed on the cloud. In the 1980s and 1990s, we had increasing use of microcomputers in libraries, particularly in public areas. And starting in the 1990s and going into the 2000s and the 2010s, there has been an accelerating shift from paper to electronic full text, books and magazines or journals. And starting in 2006, libraries began offering services in virtual worlds such as Second Life. I'm going to take a look back at libraries in Second Life because what happened is extremely instructive and helps us understand what might happen in the future with social VR. Second Life, launched in 2003, is still the most commercially successful and popular virtual world to date, still, after 16 years. It has approximately 600,000 regular monthly users, that is, people who sign in at least once a month. And the last time I saw an estimate in 2015, Second Life had an estimated GDP of $500 million, which is more than many small countries. However, there were problems. In 2007 to 2009, the libraries basically trooped onto Second Life as a new means of providing service to their users. It was very popular for a while there. But the 2007 to 2009 economic downturn impacted many libraries' budgets, and that meant scaling back on outreach projects. Costs associated with SL, such as virtual land, known as SIMS, staff training, and the creation and curation of information resources. If you had something that was in paper format, but you wanted to make it available through Second Life, you had to convert it to electronic, and that usually involved a fair bit of work, depending on the resource. At a time of tightening budgets, virtual worlds were seen as a frill that very few institutions could afford. To boot, Linden Lab suddenly and unexpectedly discontinued the nonprofit and educational discount of 50% in 2011. And they did this without really consulting with the educational institutions first. Most educational institutions need to know a year in advance what their budgets are because they have to submit them for approval. Linden Lab went and cut the educational discount, essentially doubling the cost of maintaining a SIM, which means that many nonprofits, libraries, and educational institutions landed up leaving Second Life. Linden Lab did reestablish that educational discount 3 years later, but the damage was done and very few institutions bothered to come back. Okay, so what were some of the problems that we learned from providing library services in Second Life? Well, virtual library services were not terribly heavily used by Second Life avatars. Most people in Second Life were there to do things other than browse and use libraries and ask reference questions. There was a fundamental mismatch between two groups of users: Second Life users and libraries patrons, and the two did not necessarily overlap. Another problem was the steep learning curve. people who were most likely to use library services were unlikely to download and install the Second Life client software and then spend 30 to 60 minutes learning how to navigate, learning how to teleport, simply to ask a simple reference question or to read an ebook. In other words, the cost of admission was just too high. So, after an initial burst of enthusiasm, there were a lot of articles written in scholarly journals about libraries using Second Life, and a couple of books. The setting up of many academic, public, and special libraries in Second Life, almost all of these services eventually shut down within a couple of years. There simply wasn't the money or the time to expand library services to platforms where there was still too steep a learning curve to participate and still too small an audience, especially when compared to the estimated 2.5 billion people on social media, such as Facebook. Now I'm going to talk to you about VR, but I'm not talking to you about VR, meaning virtual reality. When I'm in a group of librarians, when I say VR, most of them already understand that what I am talking about is virtual reference. Many academic, public, and special libraries already offer virtual reference services to their users. Virtual reference is a reference service initiated electronically, often in real time. Patrons use computers or mobile devices to communicate with the reference staff at the library without actually being physically present. Communication channels that are frequently used in virtual reference include such tools as chat, video conferencing, voice over IP, co-browsing, which means you're sharing a web page browser with another patron, email, and instant messaging or chat. These virtual reference services are usually answered by librarians in the reference department at a library, or sometimes by the participants of a collaborative reference system serving more than one institution, such as a library consortium. Libraries are big about consortiums and working with other institutions and other libraries. So, my vision for the future, which I will lay out for you now, is that I can foresee a future where many libraries would offer virtual reference services to users via virtual reality. In other words, VR in VR. Okay? Users could make appointments for their avatar to meet in world with a reference librarian like me, who would assist them in finding electronic and printed information resources to answer their questions and meet their needs. Alternatively, and this is something we did in Second Life, library staff could sit at the virtual reference desk at regularly scheduled shifts, available to whoever popped in with a question or a query. Come on. I'm having trouble pulling up my next slide. Oh, I know why. Just give me a second. I need to reorient myself. Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Using virtual reality for virtual reference. The reference interview would encompass both text chat and voice chat and include hand gestures, body language, and even facial expressions, nonverbal cues, just as in real-life conversations. Academic, public, and special libraries could even work together to create a collaborative 24/7 reference service which spans the globe. So what I propose is that varying existing academic, school, and public library consortia join forces and share assets to provide a collaborative 24/7 reference service which spans the globe and has locations on many popular social VR platforms, expanding to new platforms as they become available. However, there are many obstacles to implementation of this vision that I have just presented to you. I am now going to spend a few minutes talking about these obstacles as well as some potential solutions to them. First obstacle, choosing which platforms on which you will provide a library's virtual reference service. Now, one option is to use an existing social VR platform. The advantage is that you don't need to start building a platform from scratch. You can leverage off of existing work. However, one of the biggest disadvantages right now, and we have seen this in the last few months, is vendor instability. For example, High Fidelity shut down completely in January 2020. Linden Lab has now, in 2 successive layoffs, laid off 70 staff working on Sansar, and they are essentially suspending work on the project, although it is still up and running at this moment. One possible solution: libraries have to deal with this sort of uncertainty with computer vendors all the time. You will remember that we have long used mini computer-based or microcomputer-based library management software, and we have always had to evaluate vendors in terms of their stability and financial success. So we will be using that knowledge that we picked up working with other types of software to evaluate and assess which platforms would be the best fit for a virtual reference service. Another possible solution: in the case of High Fidelity, the code is all open sourced, and it is now being worked on in 3 forks or copies of the software that are being worked on as a sort of a next generation High Fidelity. So we might see an open source distributed solution similar to the way that the websites that we now run are all open source and distributed. Second, or rather third point on the slide, we will probably land up providing services on multiple social VR platforms just as a way to cover the bases. That way, if any one of them does come down, we still can provide service. But as you can see, choosing a platform is a very important first step. Another serious obstacle is copyright and licensing issues. As a University of Manitoba librarian, our university signs licensing agreements with commercial database providers which restrict access to that content to people who are University of Manitoba faculty, staff, and students only. What that means is, if I were to provide reference services to a user not affiliated with my institution, I would not be able to provide them with copies of books and journal articles, even if they were easy to transmit, that is, electronically. This is a serious problem. And the fact remains that if you're going to try and provide a broad-based virtual reality-based virtual reference service, you do need to look very carefully at copyright and licensing issues for the information that you are sharing. A possible solution here is to refer users to useful public resources such as Google Scholar, which anybody can use. Another possible solution is that you would refer users to the information resources in their local public and academic libraries. And an example of a useful tool for this is WorldCat, which is a global catalog of library catalogs that you can search, and it will pull up a list of books in that user's area, and it can be extremely helpful sometimes. Libraries have always referred people to other libraries and other librarians as appropriate. That's just built in. So we will probably not let you dangle. We will try to find some way for you to access what you need. However, a problem from Second Life is still carried over into social VR platforms. There is still a steep learning curve of VR headsets and social VR. And the Second Life experience has taught us that very few people are prepared to learn how to use what they consider a game, in quotes, platform to access library services. In other words, there's a mismatch between the anticipated users of a platform, the people you want to come in, and the actual users of the platform. Okay? I want you to do a little thought experiment that we're setting up a virtual reference library in VR chat. Now stop and think about what would happen. 99% of the people that come in are not there because they have a reference question. They're just there because they stumbled across this library and they have no idea why it's there. Okay? It can be confusing. So as part of any successful virtual reference launch, there has to be some promotion work done, a sense of educating the users as to how to use the service. Okay, some possible solutions for the steep learning curve problem. Better onboarding and orientation tools for both headsets and platforms. Some people say that as more consumers take up virtual reference, that it'll become more ubiquitous. There won't be as much of a learning curve overall for many people. And another solution is the next generation of headsets and platforms. They will probably take what we have learned, sometimes the hard way, and put that to use in their design. I am going to talk at this. I call this my heresy slide, and why I call it heresy is I'm actually going to talk about a potential overfocus on VR at a VR conference. Oh my God. Anyway, what I am trying to say is one lesson that we've learned from troubles at vendors such as High Fidelity and Sansar is that to focus on virtual reality users at the expense of the desktop or flat screen users was a tactical error. Any successful launch of a virtual reference service has to include support for all kinds of users, including mobile users. It is a very, very difficult balancing act to provide support for both cutting-edge VR, AR, MR, XR users and trailing-edge users. So it's become really clear that even on the successful platforms like VR chat, we are still getting people who, we're still getting a majority of people who are on desktop only and do not yet have a VR headset. So in this interim period, we need to provide the service to people where they are. We need to provide mobile access. We need to provide flat desktop access, as well as providing VR access. Okay, I'm taking off my librarian hat. I am now going to share a short bonus talk. This is something I tacked on after a really rough week I had last week. As some of you know, I broke the news story that Linden Lab laid off another 40 plus people from Sansar and have shut down development on the Sansar platform, the social VR platform built by Linden Lab. I got a hell of a lot of flack for that. And I learned a few things as well as other lessons I have learned before. And I thought I would share some of them with you now. This is going to take about 15 minutes. Ryan's 3 rules for internet success, okay? I have said this for a long time. One of my friends in real life said I should have this printed on a t-shirt. There are 3 rules for internet success. 1, get there early. What that means is that you should jump on opportunities as they arise instead of waiting and waiting and waiting. 2, show up. By that I mean keep creating content. I have now made 1,700 blog posts over 2.5 years, which works out to about 2 blog posts a day. Show up. Keep posting content. And finally, 3rd, have something to say. It is very important that you have a knowledge of your voice, a knowledge of your brand, and be a passionate speaker about something. How all this mess got started in the first place? Well, I first set up my first personal website back in 1999, and I first started blogging in February 2002. Yes, I am as old as dirt. I have tinkered with most blogging software over the years, including Blogger and Movable Type. And very, very early on, I had the brainstorm that I could register my name and some domain name variations of it, like ryanschultz.com, ryanschultz.ca. And back in December of 2016, I was accepted into the closed beta of Sansar, and I went out and promptly bought a high-end gaming PC with a good graphics card, an Oculus Rift headset, which is what I am wearing right now as I speak to you, and the touch controller so that I could wave my hands around. That all happened in January 2017. First lesson, don't limit yourself. At first, my blog was devoted exclusively to Sansar, and it was a freebie WordPress blog that was called the Sansar News Blog. In January of 2018, Linden Lab got into an agreement with Warner Brothers Pictures to create a promotional world that was based on a scene in the movie Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg. In January of 2018, I was one of the first people to visit this recreation of the scene. It was a huge garage with all this 1980s retro stuff, memorabilia, like the red car from Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I went nuts. I took pictures. I posted all the pictures to my blog post, and I used the word exclusive in the title of that particular blog post. Well, Warner Brothers got in touch with Linden Lab, who got in touch with me and told me to remove the word exclusive and to take down all my pictures. I was also asked by Linden Lab to make it clearer that my blog was not associated with the company. Okay, so basically, I had this really uncomfortable experience where I'm on the phone, I think it was with Sherry Bryant at Linden Lab, and we basically talked through all the changes that I needed to make to my blog so that it did not appear that it was associated with Linden Lab. Plus, using the apparently forbidden word exclusive, okay? So basically, Warner Brothers leaned on Linden Lab, who leaned on me. And I do feel for Linden Lab, they did get caught in the middle, but I was pretty upset and angry at the time. I decided that after this experience, I would broaden what I wrote about on my blog to include other platforms. VRChat, High Fidelity, ScienceSpace, Rec Room, etc. And another important decision, I decided to rebrand my blog and use the domain name I had purchased about 10, 15 years ago, ryanschultz.com. As examples of how I have broadened my coverage since then, in February of 2018, I started writing about Decentraland, which just launched to the public yesterday. And since then, I have expanded my coverage of blockchain-based or cryptocurrency-based virtual worlds, CryptoVoxels, Somnium Space, etc. That has proven to be somewhat popular. In March of 2018, I started my Second Life Steals, Deals, and Freebies column because I still played and loved Second Life, and I love to find freebies and steals and deals, and I like to share that information with people, so I decided to start sharing it as part of a regular column. That column, Second Life Steals, Deals, and Freebies, has become by far the most popular part of my blog. I get a lot of visitors because of it. Now, there are times when you try to expand out and it backfires, and I have a very recent example of that. In January of 2020, I took it upon myself that I was going to start doing daily updates on the Wuhan coronavirus crisis. But it was too much off-brand. It was too much of a leap for most of my readers. And on top of that, I was completely stressing myself out trying to cover this. And I dropped it after 3 weeks. Now, I still will write occasionally about the coronavirus here and there, but I'll probably be writing about it mostly for its impact on social VR and virtual worlds and how it will help and how it will hurt it. But I learned a lesson that just because you can cover a topic doesn't mean that you may not be the best person to talk about it. There are dozens of experts around the world who are much better people to write a blog about the coronavirus than me. So I have decided to stick to my knitting and stick to social VR, virtual worlds, and the metaverse. Second lesson, be upfront and honest with your readers. Have opinions. Express your opinions. People will appreciate your honesty. However, you should be aware of your own personal biases when you are writing blog posts. If you screw up, and yes, you will screw up if you are a beginning blogger, admit it. Own it, apologize, and move on. That is very, very important. People will appreciate your willingness to make and admit mistakes. If you are going to be paid or to receive some other consideration for your blog posts, I think it's important to be clear and upfront with your readers about the relationship. I am now a paid sponsor blogger for ScienceSpace, and at the end of each of my blog posts for ScienceSpace, I state at the very end that I am this is a sponsored blog post and I'm being paid for it. Okay. Same goes for paid advertising. If you are inserting advertising in your blog, clearly mark it as advertising. Okay. One of the things that I have discovered is as your blog becomes more popular, people will come to you with commercial ideas and commercial deals and asking you to write sponsored blog posts and be paid for it. You really need to have a firm grip on your brand, know your brand and what you represent to your readers. It will help you deal with gray areas. And let me tell you, the gray areas will be coming more and more often as your blog becomes popular and has an increasing readership. Third lesson, build community. In November of 2018, I set up a Discord server for readers of my blog along with the Patreon. By the way, the Patreon is now actually covering 100% of my WordPress hosting costs. I have a business plan with WordPress that's $33 a month, and I am currently pulling in $34 a month from my Patreon patrons. Thank you. But my Discord server was something that turned out to be a real benefit to me. It is now at 375 members. It is the world's first cross virtual worlds discussion forum with people from every social VR platform and virtual world out there that you can imagine. And there's a great deal of discussion, argument, and debate that takes place. And many of my new story ideas originally come from that group of people. It's like my own focus group. It's wonderful. I should have done this a lot sooner. Oops. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having slide difficulties. Your community can also be a sounding board and a source of support during rough patches. I had received a whole bunch of hateful comments and mail for reporting on the latest Sansar layoffs. But I had a lot of people within that community basically say to me, you know, yeah, you could have handled it perhaps a little better here and there, and I still think you did the right thing. And we still support you, and we still like your blog, and we still want you to keep blogging, and we do not want you to quit. So it kind of was very gratifying to me at a time where I was really struggling with the decision that I had made last week. And I realized that over the last 2.5 years, I have built a community of people who have my back. And it was really something that I leaned on last week. However, if you're going to build a community, you need to set up community guidelines and you need to know how to deal with trolls and disruptive people quickly. Keep your community a safe and welcoming place to share ideas. My rule is first strike, I will give you a warning. Second rule, and you're banned. I do not pussyfoot around because I have learned that, for example, I had one person come in and he had very rigidly held opinions and he would constantly beat other people over the head with them. And it was really irritating to a lot of my other users, and he wasn't very receptive to other ideas. So first I told him to kind of tone it down, and then he refused, and then I banned him. Simple as that, okay? So setting up a Discord server was, in retrospect, one of the best decisions I ever made in running a blog. Fourth and final lesson, have fun. Blogging is not for everyone. If you don't love it, for God's sake, don't do it, because it is a lot of hard work to write a blog and to build an audience over the years. Also, do not expect to get rich from a blog. It is only 2.5 years in that I have been able to cover my own hosting costs, and I am just starting to generate a little income on top of that through advertising. There is a really good book by Barbara Scheer, S-H-E-R. It's called Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow. And I subscribe to that view. If you do something you love, the enthusiasm that you will generate will rub off on other people, and they will be attracted to you because you are so enthusiastic, and the money will follow. Finally, don't let the haters get you down. And let me tell you, as you become more popular, you will get more haters. In fact, getting more haters is actually a sign that you are succeeding. And finally, as you move from being a hobbyist blogger, eventually you're going to have to deal with the whole blogger versus journalist question at some point, and you're going to have to inject some measure of journalistic ethics in what it is that you do, okay? In reporting on the most recent layoffs at Sansar, what I should have done as a journalist was also get a quote from Linden Lab on this before going to press. What I should have done before writing that blog post was double check that they were shutting Sansar down. As it turns out, they've stopped all development, but they haven't shut Sansar down yet. So I made a couple of really bad mistakes, but you make the mistakes and then you learn from them. And I am now, after what happened last week, I now can say to myself, okay, I'm at a point where I've got 600 to 6,000 viewers a day. I am a journalist now. And that means I have certain responsibilities. And that is the end of my talk. Chris, if can you unmute the audience in case anybody has any questions? Hi. I see so many friendly faces. Hi.
Oh, hey.
Yay, well done,
Yay.
Ryan.
So yeah, throw me your Sansar dollars. I don't know how long they're going to be good for, so I can go shopping.
Have I become very big, Chris, or is this normal height? Am I okay still? I feel high.
You're
I'm
normal,
high off the
Daniel.
summit. Okay,
You're
good.
fine.
All right, good. Thank you.
You can go into
feel high
VR
off
mode
the
and hit
summit.
recenter too, Daniel.
Let me quickly do that. VR mode. That's in settings. VR
Yes.
mode. Recenter.
There
So
you go.
does
You look
anybody
great.
have any questions for me about either of my two hats?
I do, Ryan. Please. I like to jump in with questions. Oh, can you hear me?
Right there, Ryan.
Yes, I can hear you. Where are you? Oh, hi,
Right here.
Daniel. Hi.
Hi there. So first of all, Ryan, thank you so much for your perspective on virtual worlds. And it's very interesting to hear from somebody who's been in the game of virtual worlds much longer than ourselves, and to be able to compare and contrast what's been happening and this new development with immersive virtual worlds. I just wanted to say, I really felt for you when you posted that news about Sansar and you got so much criticism for it, and we feel strongly that we want to support you in that, because just kind of applauding and agreeing and going along with the mainstream doesn't actually serve us. So critical voices are really important, and the fact that you're willing to get flack for being critical or honest, I really applaud that and I appreciate that. So thank you very much, Ryan. I just wanted to say
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Questions? Okay. I do have some more questions. I'm just giving other people the opportunity. All right. So Ryan, here's another question.
Sure.
You've got an Oculus Rift. How much time do you go in world versus on 2D on a ratio?
Well, it's
one?
interesting that you should ask that, because during this particular conference, I have found that most often I have been watching the live stream to YouTube.
Yeah.
And that is because sometimes I just choose to lie on the sofa with my trusty
Yes.
old iPad 2 and just watch the live stream, because I don't
Right.
really feel the need to be immersed and present in the
Yeah.
in the presentation. But
Mhm.
I mean, the amount of time I spend in a headset varies a lot. It can be, I've gotten myself to the point now where I could be up to about 3 hours in a VR headset without feeling
Yeah.
any ill effects.
Yeah.
But if there's like a group meeting in Sansar, like a product meeting in Sansar, I might choose to attend in VR. But since I'm in the audience, I might as well just go into desktop and just have it running on desktop and
Yeah.
just observe from there. So it depends
Right.
on what it is I'm doing and how I go in.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. Anyone else? Another opportunity here.
Michael?
Yes. Oh, he's muted. Wait.
Michael, you're
let me-
muted. I can't hear
Yeah.
you.
Oh, and I'm not host, Chris.
Oh, everyone is unmuted. He'll just
Listening?
need to unmute himself.
There you go. Go on,
Michael?
Michael. Hi.
Cool. Hey Ryan, so thanks so much
Hi.
for your talk. I wanted to ask you, related to like one of the things that you often write about in your blog, which I think is like the yet another workplace collaboration app thing. And because there are, like you write in your blog, there are so many different platforms that are basically trying to go for this like remote working or enterprise collaboration
Yeah.
type.
Remote co-working, remote working,
Yeah.
remote
And
work
I know,
teams.
yeah, I know many of them like they're not doing it like the best they can. And so I was curious, what do you think is the thing that's essentially missing from many of these enterprise apps?
Okay, I think the big problem, particularly in North America, is that there is still not a concerted push towards support for remote workers. Most of the companies are still expecting their staff to show up and commute to a central office and do their work there. And I think that I do apologize. I'm kind of turned around from my my Oculus sensors, so I'm having a few difficulties right now. I don't know how I got my back to my sensors. How do I
Looking
turn that
good to
around,
us.
Chris?
Yeah,
You're
if
looking
you
good to us.
face your sensors and then go in your menu VR mode and hit recenter, that'll fix it. And now use your right thumbstick to turn back around to the audience. Right thumbstick to the right. There you go.
Yes, looking good.
Yeah, okay, that did the job. Okay, thank you. As you could probably tell, I'm not at Engage as often as I am in other platforms. One of my occupational hazards is that I will sit there and rack my brains trying to remember, okay, what platform has this feature that I want to use? So I do apologize. Anyway, going back to your question, one of the biggest problems is that while in places like San Francisco and New York, where the rent is so expensive and remote working is a thing, they have more of a need for it than the vast majority of people who are not living in very expensive cities. The other point I want to make is that with this Wuhan coronavirus and a potential pandemic situation, that is the perfect storm of circumstances to encourage people to try things like remote work, to see how it works for them. I understand many companies in China are being forced to do that right now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's
You're welcome.
interesting you say that. Kind of in the back chat of this summit, both Alvin Van Gralen and Thomas Lewis, so Alvin Van Gralen of HTC Vive and Thomas Lewis of Microsoft Mixed Reality, both of them have said they wanted to talk to us about our experiences of putting on this kind of a conference with a view to doing something like that themselves. So expect to see more of these with bigger players.
This will push this crisis, this healthcare crisis, this public health crisis will push acceptance and uptake of this technology. VR headsets and social VR platforms. Count on it.
And a nice spin-off, or an important spin-off, is the fact that if from a health perspective that's important, but that will hopefully have an impact on carbon dioxide, less traveling. So there's more benefits than just that. So you're right. I think we have a perfect storm brewing here, and it's an honor to be part of it. Yeah. I have another question, Ryan, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you consider WebXR being at a stage now where it can be considered useful for virtual worlds?
I think it's just starting to become a tool that people can use. I think it's extremely, I welcome the development, and I want to see what people do with it. I think there's going to be two streams. There's going to be a stream of people, companies like High Fidelity and Sansar and ScienceSpace and Decentraland and Somnium Space that are all going to try and build proprietary systems. But I think at the same time, there's going to be this push towards open source software and trying to create stuff that can be decentralized and scalable. And we're starting to see that with the Three Forks project from the High Fidelity source code. There are 3 companies that are currently working on a next generation High Fidelity. We need to see a lot more development, and we need to be very careful again. We need to look at and assess vendor viability and financial success, because there's nothing, I mean, if we had this conference, if we had some of these conference sessions in Sansar, we would now be dealing with the possibility that they're going to shut down Sansar in the middle of the conference. We cannot have that sort of uncertainty.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Question for Ryan?
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. My blog address is on the slide, ryanschultz.com. You're more than welcome to come and pay a visit. We'd love to have you. And I have a Discord server. The Discord join link is actually on the left-hand side of my blog if you scroll down. And thank you so
Ryan,
much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Here. There you go.
Hello.
Can we take a selfie? Can you stay just there? And if you come to where I am standing and we turn face this way, I'll bring my tablet up, flip it round, and there. Wait, let me go. Everybody, here we go. Oh, wait, let me come in towards you a little bit there. All right, here we go. 1, 2. Oh wait, damn. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Gotcha. Wonderful.
Thank
Ryan,
you.
thank you so much. Everybody,
you.
big
It's
round
been
of
a
applause
pleasure.
for appreciation. And I have a feeling Chris might bring out some toys to play. Entertain us. He's already got, look, he's stacked animals over here.
Yeah,
Are these pick-upable
he's
for
set up in
everybody?
a menagerie. He's just demonstrating some of the cool features in Engage.
So cool.
So if
Are
you
they
want to come,
pick-upable
if you want to come
with
to the
shared FX, Chris?
petting zoo is on.
Yeah, I can do that.
Great.
Mm.
Lovely. Lovely. All right.
That's funny. Oh, tootsie, tootsie, tootsie.
Chris, I can't rotate it. How do I rotate it?
Hold your
Hi.
left trigger down. There you
I've
go.
Was
got
it?
you, yeah. Okay.
Hi,
Hi, Chaos.
Ryan. Good to see you. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
it's good to see you too. You look great.
I'm getting the
Thank
hang
you
of
So
it.
what are you
very
doing with
much.
what are you doing with yourself right now?
All kinds of things. I'm looking forward